So Dream School, tell me firstly a little bit about the play. It's been a script-based reading, I think, for the space as well, or an earlier draft? Yes.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Yes, so it is a play inspired by the only way I can describe it is it was a traumatic event that happened in America within a student body about 10 years ago now. And a lot of students in particular, safeguarding failed them. So I'm speaking loosely about the incident, and also because the play's developed so much from that point anyway, but the actual incident is still ongoing. The prosecution of the person responsible is still ongoing as we speak, but many students, some lost their lives, some lives have been forever changed, and it's not really been talked about in mainstream news. It's been documented on independent kind of journalism databases. It's been documented by the victims themselves. And in trying to make a play that had a kind of positive impact on the audience and on the world, you always try to make a piece of work that has a positive impact. You don't want to make the world worse. But in doing that, we realised how actually, we're all freelancers with varying experience, have trained in various different ways and in different institutions, and yet none of us had the capability of knowing how to make a show that is absolutely intrinsically trauma responsive without causing trauma for the creators who are making it and the audience who are watching it. And that was a real turning point for us. I think once we realised what we were doing and the responsibility we had to make sure that it was done correctly, that's where we set on this new adventure of going, okay, actually, well, can we do that? Can we set a benchmark? Can we set an industry standard for how work should be made safely? And that's in regards to kind of mental well-being, physical well-being, also inclusivity and accessibility. All of that stuff comes into a happy, safe, respected working environment. And so moving forward, we now have 3 incredible specialists linked to the project. We have a creative psychotherapist, we have an access advisor who's Shona, and we have an intimacy director as well. So that is what we're trying to get funding for, in the end aim that we can create an accredited training for artists or aspiring artists on how to go into the industry and make work and look after each other.
It sounds like it will be a landmark piece of theatre. I'm quite surprised it's not been picked up a little bit quicker, because a creative psychotherapist and trying to but be responsible with an audience's trauma response, the creative team's trauma response. It feels like it's something we're talking about a lot in theatre, but I don't know how much is actually being done.
Yeah, and that's exactly how we felt, and that's why it's taken so long to develop this project, because we were kind of pulling our hair out a bit, going whatever way we create this play, write this play, share this play, we're still putting people in danger, and we just didn't feel comfortable with that. So yeah, I don't feel like it's been done, and I really hope that we do get the funding, and I do feel it's important. There was something you said just then that made me really think. You said about I've worked with the creative psychotherapist before on an R&D this time last year actually, and I have never worked in a way that they encouraged before, and it was almost I was slightly embarrassed, being wow, why have I not considered all of these things? It's so important. And I think from everything that we're seeing in TV and film, particularly some of the responses to a lot of the true crime, true story inspired work, I think we still have a lot of progress to be made, and I think theatre has the opportunity, this project has the opportunity to do that. But it doesn't come cheap, unfortunately.
Yes. Take me, I know it's tricky because this is a whole other world of working in a rehearsal room, but what kind of thing does that practitioner ask you to consider? What are the kind of methods that they use in a rehearsal room?
It's a great question, and it's something that's still developing now, but just some of the things that come to mind that I never considered about was creating a safe space. And by the way, someone might be listening to this and go, I already do that, and that's amazing. And I'm not saying that this isn't being done, but it's definitely something that I don't feel is widely taught or encouraged to everyone anyway. So creating, for example, a safe space outside of the rehearsal room, and having, an acknowledgement and awareness that that room is to be used at any point that someone feels is necessary or they would like to use it. In that room, access to natural light, having access to making a hot drink, or there's cold water there, being able to like see an exit, know an exit sign, an exit door, sorry, having it comfortable, maybe there's blankets or there's cushions. And it's something that's so simple, but if you're working with trauma responsive material or material that could be triggering, and also to caveat that, like, we don't all have the same trigger responses, so you don't necessarily need to be working with a true crime or like what we would consider an obviously triggering piece of material. It could be anything. And that's another point to think about too, is you don't have to be working on a piece like that to make these choices. But having that room so that anyone can leave the room you're working in and actually reset the neuroresponse and take time to feel safe. Stuff like that's really important. Opening up and closing a rehearsal space. So actually spending enough time, not just warming up the bodies, but like making sure that we're kind of like crossing a threshold and we're saying we are now making work now, and taking time before you go on that lunch break to close down anything that's been opened up. You know, we don't want to be going to our lunch break, which is our rest time or recovery time, and actually some of us are still carrying what we explored, and it's affected or triggered us in a certain way. That's not healthy, it's not safe. You're then not resting, you're actually being further triggered and responding to whatever you looked at. And working with designers as well, like I think a huge thing, such as trigger responses. I know it's been a contradictory thing at the moment, and I think Shona has had a fantastic kind of comment on that in our work, in the workshop she led. But trigger warnings are really important, having like adequate ones. So trigger warnings that actually enable someone to watch the show. You're not putting a trigger warning on to say, beware if this affects you. It's actually going, this is in the show, this is how you can enjoy it and experience it and feel in control, knowing that this could trigger you. And like, again, like having a safe space for the audience and allowing audiences to come in and out of the production, I think is a huge thing that we need to tackle. You know, being told once you leave a space you're not allowed to re-enter, I think it's hugely inaccessible for people who are triggered, for example, or need a safe space to leave to.
It's really interesting how much of this is based around very physical, logistical, concrete things, because I think when we talk about safe spaces we imagine it being, oh, we've just announced that it's a safe space and now everyone's fine. Mm-hmm. But actually it's putting in place very practical things.
It absolutely is, and I think that's it. Like once you actually break down, you know, and also that safe room, for example, it's not inclusive. That's not what makes everyone feel safe. So why not ask your team at the beginning, we're going to create a safe space for everyone to enjoy. What would you like in that? For example, is it having something sugary, like a biscuit in there, for example? Maybe some people don't want natural light, so having maybe like a separate space that's slightly darker. I think it's like you say, it's actually actionable things, but we need to make them actionable. We need to find out how we do that by asking questions and engaging a little bit more, I think.
Directing your work.
Mm-hmm.